Hey friends, welcome back to our channel. In today's video, we explore the top 15 countries where Muslims face restrictions or are not welcome in 2024. Despite Islam being one of the world's largest religions, there are places where Muslims encounter significant challenges, whether due to government policies, societal discrimination, or religious intolerance. From countries with strict visa restrictions to those grappling with religious tensions, we examine the complex factors behind these barriers and how they impact the Muslim population worldwide. Stay tuned to learn more about these countries and their policies. 15. Central African Republic. The Central African Republic, CAR, has experienced severe religious and ethnic conflict in recent years, with tensions between the Muslim minority and the Christian majority escalating into violent clashes. The conflict began in 2013 when a predominantly Muslim rebel group, the Salika, seized power, leading to a violent backlash from Christian militias known as the Anti-Balaka. The violence has displaced hundreds of thousands of people and left the country deeply divided along religious lines. While the CAR does not officially ban Muslims, the ongoing conflict has made it extremely dangerous for Muslims to live in certain areas, particularly in the capital, Bangui, where they face attacks and discrimination. The United Nations and other international organizations have attempted to mediate peace, but the situation remains volatile, and the Muslim community continues to face significant challenges. 14. Cuba. Cuba, a communist state since the revolution of 1959, has a complex relationship with religion. While Cuba does not officially ban Muslims or Islam, the country's history of promoting atheism under its communist ideology has created a challenging environment for religious communities. Following the revolution, religious institutions were marginalized, and practicing a religion could lead to discrimination or social exclusion. In recent decades, however, the Cuban government has eased restrictions on religious practices, allowing for greater religious freedom, including the practice of Islam. The Muslim community in Cuba is small but growing, with mosques now operating in Havana and other major cities. While the situation for Muslims has improved, the country's long history of atheism and restrictions on religious expression still affect the way religious minorities are treated. 13. North Korea. North Korea, officially known as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, is one of the most isolated and authoritarian regimes in the world. The country is known for its strict state control over all aspects of life, including religion. While North Korea does not officially ban Islam, there are no known practicing Muslims in the country, and religious freedom is heavily suppressed. The state promotes a personality cult around its leadership, and any form of organized religion is viewed with suspicion. North Koreans are required to show absolute loyalty to the ruling Kim family, and any deviation from state ideology can result in imprisonment, torture, or execution. The regime controls access to information, so citizens have little exposure to foreign cultures or religions, including Islam. As a result, it is not a place where Muslims, or any religious group, can openly practice their faith. 12. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, located on the Arabian Peninsula, plays a central role in the Islamic world as the custodian of Islam's two holiest cities, Mecca and Medina. While Muslims are required to visit the country for the Hajj pilgrimage at least once in their lifetime, non-Muslims are not allowed to enter these cities. Saudi Arabia is governed by strict interpretations of Islamic law, known as Wahhabism, and this extends to everyday life, with religious police enforcing codes of dress and behavior. Although the country has taken steps toward modernization under Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's Vision 2030 plan, which includes diversifying the economy and relaxing some social restrictions, the country remains deeply conservative. Religious freedom is highly restricted, and non-Muslim religious practices are not permitted publicly. Additionally, the country's legal system is based on Sharia law, and there are severe penalties for blasphemy or apostasy. While Saudi Arabia is integral to the global Islamic community, its strict religious laws and governance make it a challenging environment for non-Muslims. 11. Angola. Angola, a predominantly Christian country in southern Africa, has taken controversial steps in recent years that appear to target Islam. In 2013, Angola was accused of banning Islam after reports surfaced that the government had closed down mosques and demolished some Islamic structures. While the Angolan government denied that it had officially banned Islam, the closure of mosques and the refusal to recognize Islam as an official religion have fueled accusations of religious intolerance. The Muslim population in Angola is small, and they face difficulties in practicing their faith openly, as the government has restricted the construction of new mosques and religious centers. Despite the absence of a formal ban, the country's actions reflect a broader discomfort with Islam and a lack of legal protections for religious minorities. 10. Hungary. Hungary, under the leadership of Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, has taken a strong anti-immigrant stance, particularly against Muslim refugees and migrants. Orbán's government has framed Muslim immigration as a threat to European Christian identity and has implemented strict border controls to prevent migrants from entering the country. Hungary has also refused to participate in EU resettlement programs for refugees, many of whom are Muslims fleeing conflict in the Middle East and Africa. While Hungary does not officially ban Muslims from entering the country, the government's rhetoric and policies have created a hostile environment for Muslims, who make up a small minority of the population. Anti-Muslim sentiment is fueled by nationalist media and political discourse, contributing to a climate of fear and exclusion. 9. Austria. Austria has taken a hard line on immigration and integration in recent years, with policies that many see as targeting the Muslim community. In 2017, Austria passed a law banning the wearing of full face veils in public spaces, and in 2019, it introduced a ban on headscarves for girls under the age of 10 in schools. These measures are part of a broader effort to promote what the Austrian government calls Austrian values and prevent the spread of radical Islam. However, critics argue that these policies stigmatize Muslims and contribute to their marginalization in society. Austria has also faced challenges with radicalization, with a number of Austrian Muslims joining extremist groups like ISIS in recent years. While the government insists its policies are aimed at countering extremism, many in the Muslim community feel that they are being unfairly targeted and excluded from Austrian society. 8. Denmark. Denmark has implemented some of the most restrictive immigration and integration policies in Europe, particularly targeting Muslim communities. In 2018, Denmark introduced a ban on face coverings, including the niqab and burqa, in public spaces, which was seen as an attempt to limit the visibility of Islam in Danish society. The Danish government has also introduced policies aimed at curbing what it calls parallel societies, where immigrant communities, particularly Muslims, are seen as failing to integrate into Danish culture. These policies include restrictions on where immigrants can live, compulsory language classes, and penalties for failing to integrate. While Muslims are not banned from entering or residing in Denmark, these measures have contributed to an environment of hostility and exclusion, with many Muslims reporting increased discrimination in employment, education, and public life. 7. Israel. Israel's relationship with its Muslim population, both within its borders and in the occupied Palestinian territories, is fraught with political and religious tension. Muslims are not banned from entering Israel, but Palestinian Muslims living in Gaza and the West Bank face severe restrictions on movement, employment, and access to basic services. The Israeli government's security measures, including checkpoints, the separation wall, and military operations, have been widely criticized for violating human rights and contributing to the disenfranchisement of Palestinians. Within Israel, Muslims make up about 18% of the population and have citizenship, but they often face systemic discrimination in housing, employment, and education. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, coupled with growing Jewish nationalist movements, has exacerbated divisions between Muslims and Jews in the region, leading to periodic outbreaks of violence and ongoing tensions over access to holy sites in Jerusalem. 6. Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has a long history of religious and ethnic tensions, particularly between the majority Sinhalese and minority Tamils, but in recent years, Muslims have increasingly become targets of discrimination and violence. In the aftermath of the 2019 Easter Sunday bombings, which were carried out by Islamist extremists, anti-Muslim sentiment has surged, leading to mob violence, boycotts of Muslim-owned businesses, and government policies that disproportionately affect the Muslim community. In 2020, the Sri Lankan government introduced mandatory cremation for COVID-19 victims, which violated Islamic burial practices, though this policy was eventually reversed after international outcry. Muslim women have also faced restrictions on religious dress, with proposals to ban the burqa and shut down Islamic schools sparking further controversy. While Muslims make up about 10% of the population, they are increasingly marginalized in a country still grappling with the legacy of its civil war and deep-seated ethnic divisions. 5. Switzerland. Switzerland, a traditionally neutral country, has seen increasing debate over the presence and visibility of Islam in its society. In 2009, Swiss voters approved a referendum banning the construction of new minarets, a decision that was widely criticized as discriminatory. This was followed in 2021 by a ban on face coverings, including the niqab and burqa, in public spaces. While Switzerland does not ban Muslims or Islam outright, these measures reflect a growing discomfort with the religion among segments of the population, particularly in rural areas. Critics argue that such laws are rooted in xenophobia and contribute to the marginalization of the country's Muslim population, which accounts for about 5% of the total population. Proponents of the bans argue that they are necessary to preserve Swiss cultural values and promote gender equality, but the measures have sparked debates over religious freedom and integration in Swiss society. 4. France. France does not ban Muslims from entering the country, but has implemented laws and policies that some see as disproportionately targeting the Muslim community. France's staunch secularism, known as laicite, mandates a strict separation between religion and public life. As a result, the wearing of conspicuous religious symbols, such as the hijab, is banned in public schools, and the burqa and niqab are prohibited in public spaces. These laws have sparked controversy and accusations of Islamophobia, with critics arguing that they unfairly target Muslim women. France has also struggled with terrorist attacks carried out by Islamist extremists, leading to heightened security measures and increasing scrutiny of Muslim communities. While the government insists its policies are intended to uphold secularism and counter extremism, some argue that they foster discrimination and marginalization, particularly in housing, employment, and law enforcement, where Muslims often face disproportionate rates of poverty, unemployment, and police violence. 3. China. China's relationship with its Muslim population, particularly the Uyghur minority in Xinjiang, has drawn significant international condemnation. Though Muslims are not officially banned from entering or residing in China, the government's policy toward the Uyghurs has been described as a systematic campaign of repression. This includes mass surveillance, arbitrary detentions, forced labor, and attempts to erase Uyghur culture and religion, which the Chinese government views as threats to national security. Over 1 million Uyghurs are believed to be detained in so-called re-education camps, where reports of torture, forced sterilization, and indoctrination have emerged. China justifies these measures as part of its fight against terrorism and extremism, but critics argue they are attempts to assimilate and control the Uyghur population. While Han Chinese Muslims generally do not face the same level of persecution, strict controls on religious practices, including the banning of Islamic dress in some regions, have also impacted their ability to freely practice Islam. 2. Myanmar. In Myanmar, the Muslim Rohingya community has faced some of the worst human rights abuses in modern history. While Myanmar does not ban Muslims outright, it effectively restricts their citizenship and civil rights, especially for the Rohingya people, who are considered by the government to be illegal immigrants from Bangladesh despite having lived in Myanmar for generations. In 2017, the military launched a brutal crackdown on Rohingya villages, which resulted in mass killings, sexual violence, and the displacement of more than 700,000 Rohingya to refugee camps in Bangladesh. The United Nations and human rights organizations have described this as ethnic cleansing or even genocide. Despite international outcry, Myanmar continues to deny Rohingya citizenship under its 1982 citizenship law, leaving them stateless. Restrictions on freedom of movement, access to education, and employment opportunities have further marginalized Muslims across the country. As a result, many Rohingya who remain in Myanmar live in squalid camps and ghettos, effectively cut off from the rest of society. 1. India. India, home to over 200 million Muslims, has seen increasing religious tensions in recent years. Though India is constitutionally secular, the rise of Hindu nationalism has led to fears that the country's Muslim population faces growing discrimination. Policies like the Citizenship Amendment Act, CAA, which fast-tracks citizenship for non-Muslim immigrants from neighboring countries, and the National Register of Citizens, NRC, have stoked concerns that Muslims could be rendered stateless. Communal violence, lynchings, and hate speech have also contributed to a climate of fear. Although India does not officially restrict Muslims from entering the country, there are instances of violence against Muslims, such as mob lynchings over allegations of cow slaughter, which is sacred to Hindus. The polarizing political rhetoric around Muslims, amplified by certain segments of the media and political sphere, has increased hostility in some regions, leading many to question their safety and place in Indian society. Nonetheless, India's Muslim population remains a vital part of its social fabric, contributing significantly to the nation's culture, history, and economy.